Congressman Carlos Gimenez. Carlos, before we kind of dig into the nuts and bolts of this, I'd just like to start with your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling, not only upholding that Mississippi law banning abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, but overturning decades of precedent there by striking down Roe v. Wade.
Well, I'm very glad that the Supreme Court actually overturned something, a really bad decision done over 50 years ago. Really, there was a lot of contortions on that decision that somehow that abortion was somehow a right, somehow enumerated in our Constitution, and it never was. And so all the Supreme Court is saying is that since it's not, therefore, then the rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution actually belong to the states. And that's exactly what this Supreme Court has said. Now, abortion rights or the prohibition on abortion is really relegated back to the people, to the representatives of those people and the states to enact laws, on this issue, and that there's going to be broad political debate on it, and there's going to be differences of opinion, but that is political opinion, and so it's not really in the hands of the courts anymore. It's in the hands of the people that actually should have been to begin with, which is the elected representatives of the people in individual states.
Yeah. And does overturning Roe v. Wade, does that open the door for other landmark cases such as same-sex marriage or contraception?
I just don't see, I don't see this as somehow being tied to anything else. I mean, this was a decision made 50 years ago. Like I said, it was a contortion. And so those folks that somehow think that same-sex marriage is going to come under attack and all that, I just don't see the same kind of fire with this. Look, this is about life, and there's nothing more important than life. And so, I'm pro-life, and I believe that life begins at conception. You can't argue with me otherwise. And so that's where the big political debate is. Whether you have same-sex marriage, that's religious in nature, and are there rights? People have the right to do what they want once they're alive. My thing has always been about protecting the unborn, and they're the most innocent of all. And so I just don't see that. That's a pretty big stretch on that. So I think that this is pretty much a decision on abortion that will remain a decision on abortion.
Congressman, do you think right now, or actually switching gears for a moment, the bipartisan gun reform bill that passed in the House and the Senate, President Biden has now signed that into law. In bipartisan negotiations, we know not everybody gets what they want. What measures in that legislation did you support and which did you oppose?
I suppose I didn't vote for it, so I'm not sure what I support. Look, some of those measures are actually here in Florida. There are some red flags here in Florida, and so some of the measures were already been applied in Florida, and we haven't had a major problem. But there's also, even on those red flag laws, there is a just cause, and there is also due rights that are attached to that law here in Florida. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen in other states. And so no, I didn't support that law. I didn't support any of the amendments that came before it. Again, these are state issues, I believe, and so it's best left to the states. And so again, I wasn't able to support that law, and I will not support that law. So I've been. In some other cases, some background checks. I think that that's justifiable. We have that law now. Whatever background checks are required to purchase a gun in a store, I think that those are reasonable. I have guns. I've gone through the background checks. I don't want terrorists. I don't want felons to have guns. But I also do not believe in restricting the right of good law-abiding Americans to obtain and own weapons. That's part of the Second Constitution. I will always defend the Second Amendment to the Constitution.
You mentioned enhancing background checks. What other measures would you support? If not those, what other measures would you support to prevent another Uvalde or a Buffalo?
Well, listen, when I was mayor of Miami-Dade County, it was pretty evident to me that the laws really don't work. You have to take active measures. And so what we did in Miami-Dade County, we made sure that every single school had a law officer, had a police officer guarding that school. The state and the school boards did a good job in really tightening up the security around the school. In Miami-Dade County, under my order, I made sure that every single police patrol car, every single police officer had an AR-15 and enhanced body armor. including helmets, so that if there was an active shooter, they'd go in aggressively. Active training to be very, very aggressive. And then finally, we created a squad, a roving squad, 24 hours a day, that responds to active shooters. You have to take active measures to protect our children and to protect the population, because many of these measures also were there to protect not only schools, but they're also protect, the public at large. Whether you have a lone gunman that goes into a shopping center or a supermarket, or you have terrorist groups that come in. Look what happened in Paris, where the Parisian police department was standing outside waiting for their SWAT team while 200 people were being shot inside that theater. That will not happen in Miami-Dade County. Those are the kind of things that we did in Miami-Dade County. Those are things that we need to do around the nation to make sure that we protect our children. If you think that laws are somehow going to protect our children and our citizenry, I've got something else for you, because you know what? There's a law against murder.
I have one more quick question before we go.
Okay?
Supreme Court also issued a very, very big ruling, one of the biggest rulings that we've seen in more than a decade, on the Second Amendment. And again, this was dealing with New York's law that requires individuals to obtain a special permit with proper cause to carry a concealed weapon. What was your reaction to that decision?
Well, again, I supported that. Look, I have a concealed weapons permit. I didn't have a special cause. I understand that in some states you have to prove that somebody's out to kill you before you can carry a concealed weapon. I think that's crazy. If you're a good law-abiding citizen, if you pass certain background checks, basically that you are deemed, by the state. And here in Florida, that's what they do. They pass a enhanced background check, and then you are issued a concealed weapons permit. It doesn't mean that I have to prove that somebody's out to get me to get one. And so, I'm fine with that Supreme Court decision. The founding fathers, they put the Second Amendment in for a reason. And I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. Look, I came from Cuba, and if we had the Second Amendment in Cuba, I'd probably be in Cuba. Okay, because we wouldn't have been under the heel of a communist regime for the last 60 years. There's no way for the people to revolt against their government because all the weapons are gone. And I think that's part of the reason why the Second Amendment was established.
Congressman Carlos Gimenez, we are out of time. We appreciate you joining us on Saturday Agenda. Have a great weekend.